All right, so my name is Lauren. I'm with the Unruly Studios team. We're the inventors of Unruly Splats, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I'm really excited to be joined by a special guest, Deb Dixon. Deb, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Deb Dixon. I'm the library media teacher at the Winter Hill Community Innovation School in Somerville, Massachusetts. And we've been connected to Splats since the prototype stage. I would say it's been kind of a nice little journey that we've been on.
Yeah, Winter Hill Community Innovation School was our very first school that we piloted with. So they've really been partners with us since the very beginning to create what we have now.
The name itself is just intriguing, right? Unruly Splats, Unruly Studios. It just sort of like, I need to know more.
Yes, we're all about being unruly, being playful, having fun. So we'll get into that in a little bit. So what is your experience level with block-based coding? First of all, write us in the chat just so we have an idea. Are you a total beginner, which is awesome, or have you done a little bit of block coding with maybe Scratch or code.org or any kind of robots, or are you like a coding pro? Let us know in the chat.
Okay. I am.
Quick hint, there's no need to have any experience at all. Awesome.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yay. All right, we've got some folks who've used Scratch and code.org. That's wonderful. And Spheros, yes, nice.
Oh, that's right, Spheros. I've used Spheros. I forgot about those.
Yep. And Dash and Dot, nice. Awesome. So our philosophy kind of revolves around computer science and coding, and then also active play and physical movement. So that's sort of where we, I guess, differ a little bit from esports, because Splats are all about getting kids out of their seats and moving. We have the on-screen time where they're doing the coding, but then we have the off-screen time when they're playing the games that they created, that they coded. And we're also all about collaboration. So we love getting both students collaborating together, but also educators in the school. Deb is a big collaborator at her school. She collaborates with the PE teacher and with the district technology specialist. And I think she also has a group of other library media specialists from other schools in the district that she works with. So we love seeing collaboration, and that's what sort of Splats is all about. And this is our crazy wild team. We're Unruly. We've got folks from the original Scratch team, from Disney and from Nickelodeon, who all helped us create Splats and what we are today. And this is what they look like for some context. So Splats are programmable floor buttons that light up and make sounds. They sense when they're stomped on, and they're codable. So you'll see in the background there's the code. It works with both iPads and Chromebooks, and students code the rules that tell Splats what to do. And the idea is that then they're creating their own active games like relay races and whack-a-mole and obstacle courses that they can then play and interact with. So rather than with a robot, when they code the robot and the robot moves, they're coding Splats, and then they get to interact and move around with the Splats.
This is so much fun.
Anything I missed, Deb?
Because so you can do more than just step on the Splats. You can throw things at the Splats, and they are super durable. You can do all kinds of stuff with them.
Yeah, this really gets the whole body into the learning, right? So you're building in movement and sensory experiences, along with coding, the thinking of that, and then whatever the overarching lesson or focus is, the content of it all. Wow.
And I've also used them tabletop also, so kids can press on them too, just while sitting at a desk or at a table.
Yeah, we've got that hole in the bottom, you might be able to notice there, and that's what Deb was alluding to. We've definitely seen teachers who will put them on the wall and then throw beanbags at them, or you can get creative with it.
I can really think of it as having an application even for like specialty areas, therapies, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, counseling even. It does look very adaptable, like you could use it and modify its use in so many ways to meet students at the level that they function at.
Yes, I actually did a presentation yesterday with an inclusion teacher from Texas School for the Blind, and she's using them with her students because they do make sounds.
I was
Blind and
going to
visually
ask that.
impaired. Yeah,
Do they make sounds? Can they have texture? Can you like?
You could tape things onto it. I've like done interactive story books with my some of my kids in my autism classes, and like we'll put a picture from the book and we get to that page, the student can press on the splat, and I've recorded a corresponding or loaded a sound effect onto it that matches the story. So you could put something on it, for sure.
That is so great. That is so meaningful.
Yeah, I love the interactive storytelling. So Deb was mentioning she's been with us from the beginning. So we were founded in Boston, and I just want to show a quick video. This video on the left here is at, I believe, Winter Hill, an after-school program. So this was during our pilot with them. And you're about to see them doing a race and place game. And what I love about it is you'll be able to see they're sort of like tagging each other in. So this was, oh, it didn't show up on the screen. This is in June 2018. So it is pre-COVID. They're not wearing masks, but you'll be able to see them tagging each other in and collaborating. So I'm just going to play it and you can see for yourself. I'll just make sure I'm sharing my sound before I do. There we go. Perfect.
Wow, team one has such transitions.
One, next person. Three, two, one, next person. Three, two, one.
All right.
You can't watch that and not smile and want to also move.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a race and place game. I think it's a student favorite. What do you think, Deb?
Yeah, definitely.
What I love about it is it immediately gets the heart pumping, and immediately there is a sense of competition. And even with esports and just sports in general, we are definitely believers in competition. We're believers in working together, but also in competition. And so, when we see students interacting with this game, they're immediately like, okay, I got to beat the person across from me.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the engagement, right? This is the key to that piece of what makes, what takes a lesson from being a lesson to being an engaged lesson.
Absolutely. And on the right-hand side, you'll see them collaborating on the code too. So this is a game that comes actually in our app, but students can modify it to change the colors, change the timing, and make it a collaborative relay race as well. All right, so I wanted to open it up to Deb now. Why is combining coding and active play important, and what's kind of stood out to you about using Splats for this?
I think to me, what's nice about Splats is the accessibility of it that it brings into coding. Because once you're starting something, you can try it and you can see right away if it's working. Because it's hard if you're looking at a screen, if your program doesn't work. It's so hard, I think, to just always figure it out why that it's not working. But I found with a lot of my students, whether my school is extremely diverse. We're a pre-K to 8 school. We have kids from dozens of different countries. We have our city's autism program is in my building. So all of my kids have used them. So whether you can, whether you can read in English at your grade level, you can still figure it out because you can get up and you can try it. Because sometimes when you're doing like, and I do and like doing like some of the code.org stuff, but sometimes it's hard to experience it because you're programming the Angry Bird or whatever else is happening. But this, you can get up and you can try it and you can see right away if it's working.
You can touch, feel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I like getting the kids up. I don't want to get them. My room is not a traditional library. It's not a quiet, we all sit the whole time. I like getting kids up and moving around. And being crazy and figuring things out and being engaged. And I find Splats has been a really good tool to do that with.
Well, yeah, I mean, then the research is there too that talks about when you pair the learning with movement or with music, a sound, texture, things that add multisensory components to the consumption process, that it sticks there, right? And then you can retrieve, recall it, and manipulate it, play with it, work with it. That makes so much sense, Deborah.
Awesome. And how are you working collaboratively in your school at Winter Hill to combine coding and play?
Well, what's been nice is we do it in my room. My curriculum has me teaching programming, but we had a Splats night pre-COVID a couple years ago where we did it a specialist Splats night. So it's like I was doing red splat, green splat, and had kids running down the hallway after programming the game. Our PE teacher set up an obstacle course using like the blue blocks, and the kids could set up the course and program the lights and the colors on the splats. Our art teacher was doing a game where there is a simple program where it flashed, the splat would flash a color and make an animal noise. So if it was a pink and they heard a moo, they would draw a pink cow. And if it was a purple color on the splat and they heard, the chicken, they would draw a purple chicken. And then our music teacher programmed, she only used 3 or 4 splats using the MIDI values. So they were playing actual notes. And depending on what grade they were in, they would either play a song, a simple song that they were doing in class, or they would try to identify the song she was playing because they were playing the actual music notes. So it's kind of nice seeing them used in all different contexts. And we've had ELA teachers using them, after school programs using them, some of our self-contained special ed classes using the splats. So there's lots of different ways to use it. There's not just one thing you can do with it.
I really like that too, the inclusivity aspect that this, again, like I said a few minutes ago, it can reach all students at whatever level they're at. And it then from there can bring students of all levels together, right? There could be a school-wide thing that's happening or a grade-wide thing that's happening that includes both inclusion and sub-separate programs and brings them together for sort of a culminating experience, which is what it's all about. The learning is happening within their school community, which is part of their larger community at large. And this is the glue, right? This is how we show students how what you learn at school matters beyond those 4 walls and how people work together, learn together.
Yeah. One of our favorite things is when some older students would design games for younger students. So it's sort of thinking about how are the younger students going to interact with the splats and like, how can we make this fun for them? And so that get that design thinking in there, and it's amazing. And all right, so this is a video that we did at Deb's school pretty much right before COVID hit. So I'm gonna share it because it talks a little bit about too. Deb is in it, and the PE teacher at Winter Hill also is in it. So it talks a little bit more about what they did with Splats. So here we go.
When I saw the Unruly Splat, it blew me away. It was what we'd been missing. My name is Jason Behrens, and I'm an innovation specialist with Somerville Public Schools. What makes Splats so unique is the combination of coding and active play. And we're working closely with our librarians and our PE teachers to create some magnificent experiences with our students.
My name is Deb Dixon. I'm the library media teacher at the Winter Hill Community Innovation School, and I love Splats.
Splats didn't take a long time to learn how to use. It's very intuitive. I use them to teach block programming skills, troubleshooting, working out bugs that's in code. I've also am using them to help with interactive storybooks that I've been reading. It's addictive. Once you start using it, your kids will want to use it all the time.
One of the things I learned when working with Splats that mistakes are okay to make, and working with your friends makes things easier.
My name is Chad Mazza. I am the Assistant Superintendent of Schools. We basically here at Winter Hill have just adopted Splats as part of the day. So it's not thought of as a one-off or as something separate. Staff collaboration plays such an important role in anything that we do, with our students, but especially with Splats, because you're really going cross-curricular.
My name is Ben Senecal. I am the PE teacher here at the Winter Hill Community Innovation School. Splats have really opened up PE to a lot of students that normally would be sitting on the side or would choose to be a referee in a game rather than a player. Now they're not only a referee, they are in control of the game. The first time the librarian and I collaborated together with the Splats was actually Splats Olympics night, where we had a bunch of different Olympic-based activities, and then we had a secret agent training course that utilized the Splats in the library. It was pretty epic.
The collaboration we had with Splats was unbelievable. There was weekly phone calls, there were meetings, so it wasn't a one-off, so to speak. It was a real level of engagement and involvement. One of the great things in the new role that I'm in as assistant superintendent is now I'm able, with the experience that I've had with Splats, take it district-wide, and so now all schools and all students will have the benefit.
Really, it's up to the teachers and the students to now turn it into something amazing that's unique, that's their own. And so we're really excited to see what happens next.
That's awesome. That is just incredible.
There we go. And Deb, I was there in that class that you were teaching where, and my favorite part is where you always, the students make the rules. So
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of your philosophy around that and student-led learning and how that ties in?
Well, yeah, and it's kind of just nice to turn over. It can be uncomfortable to turn over the reins of things to students, but it's like, let them decide how the game is going to go. So I'll sometimes introduce it with one way to play a game, like red splat, green splat. Red is stop, green is go. And then whatever light is flashing, that's what you do. But why not add more? And what if you program it, if purple comes up, what does purple mean? And what would yellow mean if that comes up? And I let kids create all their different versions of the games. And then they all create their own versions. At the end of class, we all play them. And one student who was, not my most dedicated library student, he made this whole red splat, green splat, where every color was a different Fortnite dance. And they just Fortnite danced through the whole library. And it was great. And because he got to do it in a way that was interesting for him, and he was doing the coding and he was doing the troubleshooting and, and then he had to explain how to play the game to the rest of the class, and he had to show the kids, because I don't know all the Fortnite dances. So then he had to explain it. And that was a really great moment for him to be engaged and involved and a leader and just using the Splat program playing a game. But if I said it's only red is this, green is this and blue is that, then that's that, he would have been tuned out and not wanting to do it at all.
You gave him permission to create, right? And I love the Fortnite dances like that. I bet that's what did it. He probably was like, well, this is my jam. And then he went and ran with it. And then, as you pointed out, he not only did the thinking and gained the coding skills and the thinking skills of that, but then he worked on his communication skills, because then he had to actually explain. So taking the thinking, translating it into language, considering an audience, social communication, right? And so that's that's the whole package.
Yeah, and I'm okay with the students having a better idea than what I had. That's great. Why not? I haven't been teaching coding for decades. I've been teaching books for almost 20 years, but not coding for that long. So a lot of this stuff is new to me. So I'm like, hey, if anyone figures out how to do this, show me. Where's the button for this? And it's great. And when you kind of open yourself up to the kids like that, they have a lot of respect for you doing that. So oh, okay, no, I found this. Can I show whichever? I figured this out. It's great, show us. We want to learn it too.
That is the best, that is real teaching. I think also it shows our students that we can be vulnerable too, that we are not, the keepers of knowledge. We don't know everything. We learn through them as well. So it's empowering, and it takes away the, I guess, the anxiety, right? Like the performance anxiety when they are the experts and the roles are flipped. It just creates a really warm climate and culture for good things to happen.
Yeah. and I want to play their games too. I couldn't do the Fortnite dance one. That was way too much for me. But like I was playing the red light. It's fun for me to run across my classroom. It's fun for them to be running in the library, but it was also fun for me. So I was trying a lot of their versions too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I want to like dive into this. I'm we're coming up on school vacation week. I'm probably going to be stalking the
Yep.
websites.
Yes, once you start, there's no going back. You'll want to use it for everything.
I'm a speech
Awesome.
and language pathologist. I think I didn't mention that. So I work with students across middle school and high school levels, from inclusion to sub-separate programs,
Mhm.
sub-separate for a lot of different reasons. So I just have a million light bulbs. I'm having a Thomas Edison moment every second that we're doing this discussion right now.
Love it. Full circle.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how many folks here are hybrid versus virtual versus in person, but I know, Deb, you are fully virtual right now. Is that right? So
Yeah,
how has this been working since, I think you've been virtual since almost March of 2020, if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken. So tell us a little bit about how that's been working. How are you combining the playfulness virtually? Because I think that adds like a whole new level of challenges.
Yeah, because it's hard, like, because kids are now expected to be sitting at a computer for almost 6 hours. I mean, there's little breaks, but that's a lot. And we don't have 450 splats to deliver a splat to each student's house that they can use. So what's nice with some of the virtual ways that you can use splats is a lot of the team building and icebreakers and getting used to our virtual world has been really nice to have them. We've played a lot of like getting to know you kind of games, little scavenger hunts, it'll flash red, go grab something red, and they'll take off running through their whole house, get something red and bring it back. Like it's nice that they can interact and play games with them. And it was kind of a fun thing that we did at the beginning of the year is lots of those virtual kind of team building and icebreaker games. And then once they've seen the splat in that context, then when I'm doing coding with them, like in December, when everyone is teaching coding, an hour of code and all that, they're familiar with it because they've already played a game with it virtually. So now when we're doing different other projects with it, like my fourth graders are knee deep into the Morse code pack and learning how to program the do Morse code. Like even though it's not the splat to step on, they still like being able to do all the coding and seeing the splat on the screen, showing them their code and their message that they're building. And I think playing the games with them first really helped kind of set up the engagement and the interest in wanting to learn out how all these games work and what they can do, how they can change them and adapt them. So I think that's been really neat. And I like a lot of the virtual parts of splats that you can use. And it's you have the coding screen and then there'll be a picture in a little bit, I'm sure, of the screen, the virtual screen, where you can see just the splats you need to play the game on the screen. And you don't necessarily see, because that's like the coding screen, but you can change it so you just see the splats without all the code on it. And that makes it look like the video game kind of way of seeing it. And that's been really nice to do the games with them too.
It probably helps some students too that might get overwhelmed with too much visual information.
Yes.
So by modifying the screen
Mhm.
and eliminating sort of maybe the things that can come in later once they
Yeah.
feel this and get this, that really helps with, again, like the access, how to make it
Yes.
accessible.
Mhm.
Wow, this is so like, wow. Thank you.
And so what Deb was talking about, you can see the virtual splats here on the left-hand side of the screen. And these starts the starting, the sensing, the lights, those are all categories of blocks. So you can click in there and then drag and drop them out onto the coding screen. So very similar to Scratch or Sphero, where it's block-based coding. And we've got a number of games that we came out with when the pandemic hit for virtual learning. And actually the first one was a musical splats activity pack. Deb mentioned that their music teacher was doing it, I think, before we even came out with the pack. But it's really cool where you can assign notes to numbers through a MIDI value. And so students, like she said, can code any musical song that they want. So it's really fun.
Right, and that's cultural relevance right there. I mean, I know Raina, who's in here with us today, is a huge fan of music. She's at concerts all the time. You know, kids, students love music, and so it's a way to um, just make connections, right? Even
Mhm.
making connections between school and home, meaning school and families, right? If you're having like a virtual night,
Mhm.
music is something that sort of like defies the rules of generations. So it can be, I don't know, an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, there was a student in Florida, because it was actually a music teacher who they couldn't sing or play instruments during COVID, even though they were transitioning back in person. And so she was using the Splats to teach her students the notes. And she said that one of her students coded an Imagine Dragons song. Like, amazing. Like, we never would have been able to think about that. So kids are so creative, and amazing things happen when you kind of give them the reins.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, Deb, this is an activity that you did with your students virtually, and it's called the Found Art Challenge. But I think I like your description of it as more of a scavenger hunt. Do you want to describe what's happening here?
Sure. And this is something that I did with almost all of my students. I did it with all of my kindergarten through 8th grade students, and we were all able to play it. And how it works is the Splat is programmed, and it's the fun sound effects. There's a drum roll, there's a countdown, it flashes through a bunch of colors, and then it settles on one color, and it's like it'll flash blue. And I'm like, okay, everybody get something blue, bring it back to your learning space. And then once it goes through, like, and you can change the number of objects depending on the time you have, but I believe the default is like 5 objects it goes through, and then you find those 5 things, and I tell the kids, build something with it. You can, and I'm doing it with them at the same time, like you can stack them, you could try to connect them together, and it's neat to see the kids doing this. And one of the things we did, it was making connections as we're playing this, because you get the kid that's super fast that has like the red book right next to him, and it's like, and I'll have a book my kids will read. I'm like, oh, my Dogman book is blue. I have that book too. I've already read it. And it's, you're talking with them, making connections with them, kind of building that comfort and kind of team atmosphere with them as you're doing this game. And then they start to hear the countdown, and they know the next color is coming. And it's just it was a really fun game to play with kids from 5 all the way through 14.
Right. I mean, think about it. You're asking them to do something new, but their home, which is comfortable and familiar. So
Yeah.
it lays the social emotional groundwork for availability to take in some new information, and take some risks. And there's comfort in knowing like that they're gathering things from their space, things that are meaningful to them, have stories behind them. Like I'm sure those hands have stories.
So some of these photos were actually from our team. We played this game as a team too, and came up with virtually.
It's interesting that there are only 3 hands.
It is. I know. Is there a 4th one somewhere, and where is it?
See, like I
Somebody
noticed that right
else.
away. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I need to know.
Exactly. So we also loved telling students or asking students to name their sculptures. You know, give it a name, give it a backstory, and that's also part of the fun.
Right, language, categorization. My gosh, literary elements, theme development. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, everywhere.
And this is another really fun one that we came out with as part of our icebreakers pack. And Deb mentioned doing icebreakers, and especially important during virtual. How did you use Monster Maker?
What's nice with Monster Maker is that it's not a ton of code that you have to load it. It's right there. That's the game. And what's nice, and we've had our art teacher had done something similar, before, where they're passing a paper around with a part and they're drawing a part of like a monster. But what they're doing with this is that they have their animal sound that'll happen, and the kids will build their code on their screen. And then I put a link to a Google Doc just shared in the chat. I'm like, okay, you 3 guys, you have this, click on this link, decide who's going to draw the top of the animal, the middle, and the bottom. And then they each play their code, and one student might hear a pig, someone else might hear a chicken, someone might hear a cat. And then the person with top has to draw the pig head, or the, chicken middle, and the cow feet. And then they're drawing using the Google Slides, like the doodle tool.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they can, you know, draw that right in there. And once they hit, I forget if it says like submit or finish at the end. And then once they click that, then they can see all of their pieces together. And it was so funny,
Awesome.
you know, as they're drawing it. Because then sometimes you're thinking about, how do you draw the middle of a dog? I'm like, I don't know what to draw. And then you're
really
trying
hard.
to connect it. Yeah.
Well, and
It's
think
really
about the
hard.
storytelling that can come from this, like the
Mhm.
adventures of the Ella dog, if it's like an elephant and dog. So fun.
And it is, and it's fun. And no one's drawing is amazing. I mean, no one in 30 seconds is doing great artwork with a Google Doodle tool.
No,
But and that's what makes it fun. It's like no one's looks amazing and it's hysterical. Sometimes you can figure out what animal it is, and sometimes you're asking them, what is that?
what
And
is it
it's-
exactly? But isn't it interesting to see what key features come to the front of their thinking?
Mhm.
Like the elephant has the big ears and the no, you know, his trunk. And then looking over to I think it's a dog, although it could be arguably a rat, depending. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how constraints can influence
Mhm.
the thinking and then also influence the creative process and the output.
Absolutely. And I still don't really know what the top of the left-hand one is, but
I was thinking that kind of looks like Ratatouille, but it could be a dog also,
Could
like
be a dog,
a
could be a
beagle.
bunny, like the floppy ears.
Could be.
But then there's some, like Deb was saying, this was one that I think we did in our boot camp with our educators, where there was some confusion around what was going on. And it's okay. It's okay. There's no right or wrong drawings.
No, I agree. Like I think sometimes these opportunities are the best opportunities, especially for team building and
Mhm.
again, that like the climate and culture thing. It just, you have to be silly, you have to put yourself out there, you have to be willing to take risks in order to get to the better stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like that could be a unicorn, a hippo, it could be anything.
And this is another really fun game based on the classic Would You Rather game. And we actually, since there's a group of us, we can play it too. But Deb, have you played this version of it, like the classic Would You Rather version with your students?
We've done the classic, and then we made an adaptation that kind of suited our technological abilities at the time, because we had no end of no end of technical difficulties with remote teaching. So we made a few changes to it to make it a little easier for some of our classes to play. But it's a lot of fun, because that Splat, it doesn't just all light up. You can program it to light up individual LEDs, so like the little dots.
Yeah.
So it's a great thing that you can count votes, tallies, whichever, they can see it.
This could be a voting thing. It could even be like
Mhm.
indicate which lunch you want to order.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you want the pizza or do you want the salad or whatever the options are? Ooh.
Exactly. So this is it can be super simple voting game, but this is a bit more complex because it is lighting up those individual LEDs in the code. But how it works is that you've got your, A version and your B vote, and students get to cast their votes either by a poll virtually or in the chat. And then the educator, the teacher would kind of control the code. And we're actually going to play a game of it right now. So I can kind of show you how it works.
Okay.
So there's would you rather questions behind door 1, 2, and 3. If you were playing this as a class, I think the fun part is actually getting the students into groups and them deciding together as a team on what's the would you rather question. And then they get that kind of social emotional, like, okay, there's probably going to be some disagreements. How do we compromise? How do we come up with a would you rather question that we all agree with? But
and that's another valuable tool in learning is compromise.
Exactly.
Perspective
So,
taking.
write us in the chat, which door should we open? 1, 2, or 3? And that's going to be reveal our would you rather question. All right. Couple more seconds. Any other votes? All right, let's do 2. So would you rather never use social media sites or apps again, or never watch another movie or TV show?
Ooh.
So we'll say A is never use social media and B is never watch TV. So I'm gonna exit out of here and I'm gonna go into the code here. So how it works is when I press Splat 1, I'm gonna run the code first because we gotta press run. So then, and then it lights up which ones are our voting ones. So it's Splat 1 and Splat 3. So you can see that when I press it, the LEDs are lighting up to indicate a vote. And the reason why there's nothing going on with Splats 2 and 4 is because it's overflow. So if you had a bigger class, the votes would carry over into these splats. And splat number 5 is going to show us our total. So we'll play again. So if splat 1 is never use social media and splat 3 is never watch another movie or TV show, you guys are already ahead of me. You've already cast your votes. I love it. All right, so we've got 3 A's and a B. And there we go. There's our total. But this is at its core just a very simple voting machine game. So you can take all the bells and whistles out of it if you wanted to, and just get students to vote, you know, what's your favorite animal, a cat or a dog, or what's your favorite ice cream flavor.
And it's anonymous, yes?
Yes, it is.
So that
anonymous.
is really valuable because sometimes we won't hear opinions if the students know that their name is attached.
Yeah, if you're doing it via a poll in like a Zoom room, then it is anonymous. And if you're doing it in person, it can be fun too, because they get to go up and they actually get to like cast their vote with their foot, basically.
Right, you could even have like a voting, I don't know, booth, right? Which makes it private, and they can go in and step on it or tap it or whatever. That way,
Yeah.
if you wanted to maintain that anonymity option.
Absolutely. Awesome.
That's so cool.
All right, so I put this slide in here, bop it, twist it, adapt it. Deb mentioned that she totally adapted this game because the original version just wasn't working out. So tell us a little bit about your adapted version.
Sure. What we did is I set up, what we did is kind of like, I just called it, for lack of a more creative name, I Can Name. And we had a bunch of different categories, and the students would take turns predicting how many things they could name that fit that category in 30 seconds. So like, I can name this many kinds of cereal. It's like, oh, who wants that category? And it's like, so then it's like they predict how many they can name. So we changed the number in the splat, like the votes, change it to, I can name 8 kinds of cereal in 30 seconds. And then you press, once you start it, and then it'll give like their countdown, and then they start naming them off, and I'll click. So I'm the only one interacting with the splat, but they can see the LEDs lighting up for each of the things that they said. And it's like Lucky Charms, Frosted Flakes, Rice Krispies. And it's funny. And then when you get, if they make it, once it gets to 8, then you hear cheering. And if they don't make it, you just hear 2 whistles. And it's like, oh, let's try again. Let's get our choices again. Let's see what other categories we can do. And this is a fun game. Some of the kids requested us to play it again. We kind of we spent a class playing this, so everyone was getting a turn. Then we had some time left at another class. They go, let's do that game again. So then it's like you're spinning it again and you can play. And it was, good fun for them to come up with what they were going to do. And some of them, and I know once you press go, it makes you tense and then makes your brain forget everything. Because one category is it's like, how many teachers can you name at Winter Hill? And like the kid just went blank and could only come up with 2. And I'm like, well, you're looking at 1. So let's, like, oh, okay. And it's, it was funny.
But it's interesting too to see, like, with that repetition, how almost like that constraint of time becomes less stressful, right? And then
yes,
like the cereals just start like popping right off their mouth. Yeah, that's interesting. And so do you play one student takes a turn at a time or teaming?
We did one student at a time doing it. Yeah, because that way we had such a variety of kids, Wi-Fi connection, who had sound that worked, who could figure out the chat, who couldn't. So we just did one at a time. And then it was kind of fun because then it was exciting. It goes quick enough So then the other class thinks the rest of the class is engaged in it, watching the little dots popping up to see if the classmate makes it. And then they know they have another turn coming up soon. So it was a fun game to play that kind of had the whole class engaged, even though it was one student at a time giving the information. But it was just adapting a little bit of the code to just make it work a different way. And that, I think, that's part of the fun with Splats is like I was saying before, you don't have to use it just one way.
Yeah.
If you want just the drum roll code from the found art, now you know how to make a drum roll. And then you have that. You can use that in another game that you're playing. You could take this voting code and use that in another context. And why not? Make it fit for what is interesting for your class, what you're covering in your curriculum, what your technological abilities are. It's all, why not? There's so many different things you can do.
Right. It's like a toolbox of different codes that can be
Yes.
transferable across to different purposes or different lessons. I
Yes.
think sometimes for like a non-coder, like I told you, I have no experience with this. Even just the word code is like nebulous. It's like, what do you mean? Like, I understand what a code is, but when you start talking about lots of different codes and like, what does that mean? And how do they connect to different things? It becomes a little hard to keep track of. But now this makes sense.
Yeah, and you can start with the blank. I call it my students the graph paper screen. You could start with that and completely code from scratch. Or there's so many projects already built into the Chromebook and the tablet version of it that you can start with the game that's already there, and you can change that, adapt it, get bits and pieces of it already there, and then change it into what you want it to be. And that could be fun too, that you're not starting looking at the blank screen, which can be very intimidating for a lot of kids. You're starting with a game and you're taking pieces of it and changing other pieces.
I have a student who does that. I just was talking with him yesterday, and he's moving actually, which is not something he's in favor of. So he's kind of going through a tricky time. And so we talked about strategies of what you can do about that and, ways to find joy. And so his joy is with coding and he uses Scratch. And he was showing me a game that wasn't his own. Someone else created it and was frustrated, saying, this game is broken. It probably will never be fixed. And so he stepped in and he tried to help and he was able to fix parts of it. So now he's kind of got a friendship going that's helping him through a tough time. So many things that can come from these opportunities.
That is awesome. I love that story. And yeah, students helping other students is the best. And it also deepens their own understanding too, and being able to explain things in different ways because we all learn differently. I love that. That's awesome. And so, it is, you mentioned like, what is coding? And I think that's a great point too. We always start with the basics of what are the rules for the game, because that's going to be the rules for the code. And everybody, before you even look at the graph screen, like write out what the rules are. What happens when spot 1 is pressed? What happens when spot 2 is pressed? And that's sort of the basics.
Yeah, going through the rules and visually understanding what happens if and when that rule or code actioning occurs, I think, is a good way to approach it for the less familiar folks.
Exactly. And Deb is absolutely right that it starts out by showing them how an existing game works with code and saying, okay, how could we modify this? What if we change the color to purple? What happens when, what's the rule for when it goes purple, or what's the rule for when it makes this sound? What if we added a timer? How could we make this a timing game? Those are the kinds of questions like that just kind of take it to the next level. So we're coming up near the end of time, so I wanted to just talk a little bit about sort of how it works with Unruly. So we have memberships that include both the hardware of the Splats, but then also the software of the app, unlimited seats in that. And the best part of it is the ongoing opportunities for professional development and coaching for teachers. We work with teachers all the time who have no experience in coding. And so we really, we love that because but from like week 1 to week 4, they feel like they're Splats pros. And so really our mission is to both, help teachers teach their students, but also help teach them as well, how it works. And they don't need to be experts by the end of it, certainly, and, work with your students to learn, but we provide a lot of onboarding and ongoing professional development opportunities for teachers to learn, because we want them to feel confident using Splats as well in the classroom. And so we also do a lot of really fun competitions. So Stomp Madness is coming up, inspired by March Madness. So for every stomp that a student gets on a Splat, it's going to count towards a penny towards this amazing charity called Kaboom that creates playgrounds in local areas for students to play. And so we partnered with them for this. So it's going all throughout the month of March. And for schools that are virtual, we're counting virtual stomps too. So they get to participate in as well. And we're aiming for 300,000 stomps in the month of March.
That is awesome. I love that challenge.
Yeah, it's going